Hello, welcome to my channel, Another Bibliophile Reads. My name is Greg. This is Sunday afternoon, April 22nd, 2024, and I am starting the new reading week. Usually, I like to do these little introductions on my morning walk, but this morning the path that I was using in Fredericksburg had a number of people walking with me, and they would be getting into the camera frame. So I just did it this afternoon. I am standing on my back deck next to my sunroom, and you can see the forested area behind me. This is a ravine. You can't see it very well from this angle, but there is about a 40-foot drop-off a short ways away, and then it leads to a small creek and just wooded areas, and then into the Rappahannock River. So I'm kind of fortunate that there can be no development behind my home. So I'm pretty much guaranteed to have this forested area forever behind this house. And I kind of like it because one of the most annoying things is when you live in the suburbs is when your house backs up to another house and you have neighbors behind you. And I'll save some of those weird neighbor stories for some other video. I had them when I lived in Auburn, Washington. We had some really weird neighbors that you could hear and see from your backyard. Well, anyway, I'm looking forward to this week. I have to finish up my in-person book group, The Great Alone by Kristin and continue on with Les Miserables. And I may be getting a little bit of an early start for Horror Mayhem. This is a little bit of a better view of my backyard and ravine. And you see right there is one of my wife's raised beds. She is just getting started, so nothing is growing yet. And you continue on, and you can see that fence, and you can see a little bit of the wall that is about 40 feet high that goes down into the ravine. And there is the wooded areas. It's a little too overgrown with greenery to see the creek, but then you have a hill going up a bit, and that will eventually lead to the Rappahannock River. I read Pietr, the Latvian by George Simenon, originally written in French in 1930. This is the first in the famous Magritte series, and I was really looking forward to this. I had read one Magritte book, maybe 20 years, Magritte and the Yellow Dog, and I was just thinking this is the beginning of a great new series. And it's one of those times where you have such high expectations of what you will encounter in a book that I think for them I was a little disappointed, even though it's an intriguing story. You have this rather proletarian police officer. That's how he's a big burly man. And he's following these police dispatches on the whereabouts of a criminal known as Pietr the Latvian. And some of them are contradictory. Then he gets news that there's a body found in a train. And he has this physical description of Pietr the Latvian, known as a word picture, just a description, a very detailed description of what the person looks like. And he goes to the dead body and goes, yeah, that's Pietr the Latvian. Except that Pietr the Latvian is seen elsewhere after his death. And then, of course, the investigation is on. There is a little bit of gunplay in this book, but this is Paris during the 30s, so it's not going to be like Raymond Chandler where everyone's packing heat and shooting lots of bullets everywhere. But it's well done. And the end of the mystery, I kind of knew what was happening, even though I'd never read it. I sort of figured it out as the most logical outcome, because there's lots of people Marguerite investigates, and there are sort of mysteries about this sea captain who goes away for long periods of time, only comes back to visit his wife for a couple of weeks at a time. So things are going on. And now, why I was slightly disappointed, as I said, it's mostly a disappointment in that I was expecting something really out of this world, like the Sherlock Holmes novels. And what I got was a very good book instead of an excellent book. But I will be continuing on with the series because I have about a half dozen now. So I'm looking forward to reading some more about Marguerite. I have finished The Great Alone by Kristin, a novel published in 2018. This is selected for my in-person book group. It was not my choice, although I have read one other book by Kristin, The Nightingale, and I like that book with some reservations. This is the story of a Vietnam veteran named Ernst, who comes back quite damaged. He has PTSD, and the story begins in 1974. The novel is really focused on the daughter, Leonora, called Lenny. When she is 13, the father moves the mother and Lenny up to a cabin in the wilds of Alaska. He inherited this cabin and land from a buddy who died in Vietnam. And the father of his friend decided, yep, I'm just going to let my son donate it to his army buddy. But this father is a nasty character. He's very violent. He settles arguments with his wife with his fists. And even though the mother and daughter make friends with the locals, especially a woman named Large Marge, a very large Black woman who used to be a lawyer in Washington, D.C., who decided to get out of that kind of lifestyle to escape to the wilderness of Alaska. And one of the things the author wanted to do was, and she mentioned this in the afterword, was introduce readers to the beauty of Alaska. But describing this lifestyle in this cabin with no electricity, no running water, an outhouse, even though the text says outhouses can be very clean and pleasant if taken care of properly, would, in my mind, be a living hell. I do not want that kind of wilderness living where there are bears, there are wolves, and all sorts of other critters living nearby. I like my hot water. I like my electricity. I like my clean sheets. I like the fact that I do not have to hunt for my food. I do not have to fish for my food. I do not have to gather my water when I want to bathe or cook. So right away, I had an issue with this novel. I was just not gelling with it. So I read about 200 pages and I took a break to read something else. And then I went back to this book. The problem with this book is that even though it does pick up after that area that I left off, it goes into a very melodramatic mode where I guess Kristin is kind of known for melodrama, and I do not gel with melodrama very well. I do not gel with family is love kind of novels, because even though the father is a brute, there's this great love between mother and daughter that's this very solid and loving relationship. And I'm sorry, it's just not what I'm looking for in my fiction. And then there is the love interest of 13-year-old Lenny. She meets the boy of her love, her lifelong love when she's 13. Now, it's not too unexpected on this little remote part of Alaskan wilderness. They have to get there by boat or plane. You cannot drive to this town. And he is the only other 13-year-old in her school. So naturally, they would be the love interest for each other. And it just so happens to be love for life kind of issue. And then problems occur with the husband and other issues. And something really rather major happens to one of the characters. I won't say what it is. And you can accept tragedy in a book. But what I cannot accept is authors who try to mitigate that tragedy and make a happy ending out of it. So in the end, I really did not like this book very well. Kristin Hannah can be an effective writer when she wants to be. It's just this delving into melodrama and sentimentality that just turned me off. During the month of April, I have been reading literary fiction for the BookTube Prize. I have read 4 books, and those are either in physical copy or audiobook. And after finishing my last audiobook for the BookTube Prize, I decided I wanted something a little less serious. So I picked up Shards of Earth by Adrain Tchaikovsky. This is a space opera type of science fiction book. It was originally published in 2020 or 2021, somewhere in that range, I believe. And it was just really a fun book. This is the story of humanity that has spread out to the stars, among other planets, meets lots of other different types of alien races. Now, one of these alien races that they encounter is known as the Architect. This is a moon-sized crystalline spaceship, which may actually be the alien itself. Not really sure. But this Architect likes to redesign planets. They open up the planet, get into its interior, and pull out all that mantle and make fancy structures, which basically kills everything on the planet, which included the original Earth. And billions of people died. And it's the story of the war and how humanity conquered this Architect. And they conquered it by creating this artificial humans known as navigators. And these navigators are able to navigate through unspace, which is basically a cheat to get around that, the speed limit, the speed of light limit, and you can still travel among the stars. And these navigators are essentially sort of able to communicate with the Architect, and they convince this alien to go away. And that's how they defeated this alien. Now, the alien is not dead, it's just gone away. And this is all in the prologue. This is like the first 20, 30 pages to give you a backstory. And the story takes up 40 years after this Architect has left. And it is the story of a very small spaceship known as the Vulture of God. And it's a salvage crew. And it's run by a very laid-back captain. He is no Captain Kirk. He would not pass through the Starfleet Academy if this universe had a Starfleet Academy. But he is still a rather likable captain. And on his crew, he has Ollie. She is a woman who is basically missing some limbs. It was a birth defect. But she is able to use artificial connections to get to a scorpion-like device. So it's like she has artificial limbs that she can use and manipulate. So she is the ship's engineer. There is a crab-like creature who has advertising bulletin boards on its shell for a little extra money. I don't know who sees this, but that's the kind of creature it is. He is basically the ship's financier and what do they call it? Accountant. Then that ship has a lawyer. And this lawyer is a woman who kind of likes knife fighting. You have, of course, the ship's navigator, who's incredibly important to the crew, because there are very few of these navigators. Because most people who join a program to be created into a navigator die in the process. So he is extremely rare and extremely valuable. And he's one of the few navigators who is a free agent who is not owned by a corporation. And then you have a hiver. A hiver is essentially a robotic body with a lot of bugs inside. And into this mix comes the warrior woman, we'll call her, from the Parthenon. It's a group that lives, and it's only women who create women soldiers, and they were created to help fight the architect. And she's essentially assigned to get the navigator to join the Parthenon so they can create warrior women navigators. He's not really interested, even though there is a past relationship with the warrior woman because they were together on the final battle with the original architect, and they have an unusual relationship. And so that's the crew. And I won't tell you more, but this is just a fun little audiobook to listen to. Lots of space opera, lots of adventure. And Adrain Tchaikovsky seems to be borrowing a lot from other science fiction tropes and novels. The navigator of this book seems a little bit like the navigators from the Dune series. There's no spice, but they're very rare and weird creatures. And then there's one planet that they visit that seemed an awful lot like Harry Harrison's Death World book, the original one. And I just enjoyed picking out those little bits and pieces from this book. Highly enjoyable. It's nowhere near the literary quality that I was reading or listening to for the BookTube prize. But you know something? I'm awfully glad I picked up this book because I had a whole lot of fun listening to it. I have finished reading a book for the BookTube prize, Lone Women by Victor LaValle. I can't say much about it right now, other than it is the sole representation of my 6 books of non-literary fiction. And I'm glad that there are some non-literary fiction that are making it into the BookTube prize. But what I can do is talk about the author, because I have read 3 other books by this author, and they are all worth your consideration. And I'm going to list them roughly in order from my least favorite to my favorite. There is The Ballad of Black Tom, written in 2016. This is the author's love letter to H.P. Lovecraft. He is a black man, and H.P. Lovecraft was a notorious racist. And there is a very racist short story that Lovecraft wrote called The Horror at Red Hook, set in New York City. New York City is where LaValle lives. And he wanted to sort of undo that racism of that story and tell a parallel story of a black man that you do not see behind the original Lovecraft story. Second book is The Changeling from 2017. This is the story of a new father whose name is Apollo, and he wants to be a good father, unlike his father, who was not a good father. And his wife commits an act so horrible that most parents cannot even comprehend the horrific deed that she committed. Unless maybe she didn't commit the horrific deed. This is a mixture of horror and fantasy and fairy tale. It is the story of changelings in New York City. Really kind of interesting. But my favorite of the books that I've read by this author is still The Devil in Silver, originally published in 2012. This is the story of a man named Pepper, who's committed to an insane asylum in New York City. However, in this insane asylum, there is an old man with the head of a bison who is locked behind doors that no other inmates are allowed to look at or know about. Except that this man with a bison head doesn't stay locked behind that door. Now, if you are a horror fan, this is a story set in an insane asylum with a monster among the inmates. Just pick it up and read it if you haven't already. It's the end of the week. And how am I doing on Les Miserables by Victor Hugo? I'm about 895, 96 pages, somewhere around there. I am 1 page short of my 33 pages a day goal, so I'm considering that just fine. The story in Les Miserables is focusing very heavily on Marius and Cosette. Not the most interesting part of the story so far for me. I did read about the famous slang section just the other day, and that was really rather interesting about how people use language. Well, anyway, now it's going to be on to next week. I've got a couple more days in April, and then it's going to be May and Horror Mayhem. I am really excited to start Horror Mayhem, where I will be reading a lot of short stories. Thank you for watching, and keep on reading.